Interesting.
That was it's helpful to be sure.
Well, there it is.
Three people waiting.
I guess the cool thing is since you have a functional webcam, they'll get to see all of your fun expressions. So that's good. Welcome one and all. We'll see how many actually chime in and join for today.
4 people. That's a new record, man.
That is a new record.
Is Ben there? Ben.
Probably the dude named Ben is following us today. So welcome everyone. I'm Dr. Tesla, who today will remain faceless. Maybe I'll just go in and keep changing my background picture.
I am Dr. D, and as you can tell from my screen here, the D is for Doom, so that's something.
Nice.
Right? Maybe? I don't know. We do what we can. I hope everybody's having a fantastic Friday. It is it's certainly a day that ends in Y.
Yes, it is a day that ends in Y, and it looks like we have gone from 4 to 0.
4 to 1. Okay, got it.
So 0 is good. That's the good news. Yeah, I don't know what the interest there is. So all right. So here we go. We've got some interesting topics today, and I'm going to try and work on.
As the kids say, we have some hot takes. We have some hot takes.
There you go.
On professional development. That's what PD stands for. Not police department. We're not. This is not that.
Nope.
So if you're watching this and you're
hoping
thinking
for this
like
is
defund
a really
the police or whatever,
right? That
is
yeah. There's no yeah. So if it
which
comes
by
up
the
on
way
the PD,
is a stupid idea.
That is
at me.
Seriously dumb idea, right? Because we all want to live in chaos and total anarchy and all the other things. Yeah, that's not a good idea. So this is an idea that we kind of hashed together at some point today. So I'm curious to hear kind of your opening thoughts on what this is.
So professional development is something that we are all told, if you have a job, right? You're all told that you need to be doing professional development, and you're all told that your company, right, your place of business will pay for certain professional developments, right? Here's the thing. Turns out, in my opinion, right, so I'll preface this by saying in my opinion, your job will only pay for PDs that are useful for your job, which makes sense, right? From a business owner's perspective, why are you paying for somebody to better themselves so that they will go out and apply those skills someplace else, right? Unfortunately, the PD that you want is not always the PD that you need, nor is it the PD that your job will pay for. Some of these PDs end up being, let's just say, worthless trainings on, I don't know,
I'm shocked
how to handle washing your hands during COVID-19, which is a real PD that I took about a month ago. Is what it is, right? Some of the PDs that you want to do, you really have to make a stretch play, right? And so can you have too much PD? And in my opinion, you can place yourself out of your current job by having too much PD. It's almost this magic balance that you want to hit, right? Where you're doing enough, but you're not doing so much. So what's the expression, right? The tall blade of grass gets cut first, right?
Yes, the tallest blade of grass is the first to be cut. Yes,
right. You don't want to be
the same analogy
as
it's always the first guy through the door that gets shut.
Yes, exactly.
Same analogy. Exactly the same.
So that's kind of where I stand, right, with PD. Now, that being said, if you're clever, you can get things approved for professional development that other people can't, right? And it's all about how you approach it and how you spin it. Right. So you always need to be looking for the value that you can add to where you're at based off of where you want to go, right? So I think really what I'm talking about is recognizing where you are, having a goal of where you want to be, and making those two things align in such a way that you are currently where you currently are, you're making that work for you.
Yeah.
It's a tricky dance sometimes.
It is a tricky balance. So part of the other aspect of what we're trying to understand tonight is there such a thing as too much PD? And so where does that question come from?
Yeah, and I think that kind of stems, at least where I asked it from, was when I was looking for jobs after getting my PhD, I got too much education. And now it's harder. It's actually harder for somebody with a PhD. And I know. All right, here, everybody, you can hear it. It's the world's tiniest violin playing for Dr. D, right? Oh, you got your PhD and then you couldn't find a job. Boo-hoo, right? I get it. It's a very first world problem, okay? But when students ask me currently, do you think it's worth it for me to get my PhD? My response is, it depends. Depends on what you want to do. If you want to ultimately go into academia, then yes, PhD is definitely value added. If you want to work in the professional sector for your career, I would stop at a master's. And in fact, I might even steer you towards an MBA, because that's going to help you climb much better than going for your PhD. It just is. That is what it is, because when you get promoted, most places it's easier to climb the management ladder than it is to climb the expert ladder.
Truth. Yes, truth.
So that's where this idea kind of springs from in my mind, right? Can you do too much PD? Can you get too much education? At first glance, the answer seems obvious that it's a no, right? And here's where you're going to get the engineering answer, right? It depends. It depends on what your goal is.
It does. It's a very interesting prospect. It is a very interesting prospect. So there's a lot to this topic, and one of the things that I wanted to hit on specifically was the things that do and don't classify as professional development and why that even is a thing. One of them is this idea that you have to be only developing for skills specifically for your job, right? But there's also an aspect of this where that may or may not necessarily be the case, and that's okay. So when it's not related to the job immediately, does it still serve some kind of a purpose? Is it still at that point professional development? And I think that's one of the questions that does need to be answered.
And so I think, now again, and more importantly, this is where you need to be clever, right, with how you spin your professional development to your manager or whoever needs to approve it as professional development, because we all know you might need a certain number of CEUs for something, right? And so each training is broken down in that way, right? You get like half of a credit here, and you need a certain number. Always make sure that you understand what your target number is if you're in a system like that. But it really comes down to what you can convince other people are skills that you need, right? And so, for example, if you're an engineer and you want to take some classes, right, that are not necessarily engineering based, right? How can you spin that, right? So the biggest thing that comes to mind is, say you want, to start studying more into like economics, right? That's an easy one to bill, right? You can say, well, I want to bolster project management skills, right? I want to do this, right? I want to develop those skills, right? Where it gets harder is where you have things that are a little bit more abstract, right? So if you work at a university and you want to take the principles and practices of engineering exam, also commonly known as the PE, right, for licensing, how do you spin that, right? Because that doesn't necessarily add value to you as someone who is teaching.
Right. And it's not something that can it's not something that is suddenly turned around and turned into positive cash flow for the entity that you're employed by. And that's where there's aspects that are challenging. So it can be difficult to even get approval to do the PD that really is required. And so that's a kind of an interesting position that you and I kind of tend to find ourselves in. Is it's heavily encouraged, but usually it's a thing that has to be done peripherally to all the other things that we're already doing peripherally to the other things that we're doing peripherally, right?
Yeah. And oftentimes you will find yourself, well, at least I find myself in the position where I'm going to do it anyway.
Right.
I ask
gotta
first.
Make it happen.
I ask first to see if I can maybe get a class paid for or something.
It's usually worth like the price of a question. Questions are free. Some of them can get you fired, but generally questions are free.
Yeah, just don't burn any bridges, right? That's a big thing.
That's oh, you're not supposed to do that?
No. Whoops. Only after you cross them.
Only after you cross them.
No going back.
Yeah. So one of the things that I thought about on this topic especially was this idea that I really don't know. So I want to circle back to your comment about the PhD, because that was very, very profound, and I think we need to expand on that in light of this topic. But to finish the thought here, the way that PD happens, the way that you can apply it, there's not really an upper limit to what your usefulness can be if you're actually regularly in professional development. And so I don't see there really being a ceiling. So for those that want like a TLDR version of this, I guess my answer to the question posed in the title here is no. You can't do too much PD if you're not repeating the same thing year after year after year, right? If you're relying on like in the medical field where I have some experience, and you're relying on CEUs, and you make sure that you get your CEUs by re-upping, as part of that anyway, you re-up your CPR credits. Well, okay, that's a part of it. That's not the whole thing. But if that's your go-to, yes, they keep flip-flopping back and forth. Is it 30 breaths, or is it 60 compressions, or is it 30 compressions and breaths, or is it no breaths and all compressions? They can't really make up their mind. So they flip-flop around. Right.
Doing a double axe handle slam.
That's right. Yeah. Well, I mean,
also don't follow my advice. It's not what you do.
Right. You also sit on them and then rock back and forth in a very strange way if you watch any of the medical drama shows. But that has
use your
not
knee.
That's not what actual CPR looks like. So don't do that. PSA announcement there for not doing whatever you see on TV just because it seems like a good idea. That'll tie in again later in the show because reasons.
It's called foreshadowing.
That's right, foreshadowing. It's we're
building suspense. We're trying to.
That's right.
This is a hook.
That's right.
You can't really see because my background is new webcam and all that.
And
I apologize.
No
Not
webcam
really.
because complicated reasons. So we'll work on addressing that. I'm probably gonna have to do a duplicate of what you're running just for the sake of mechanics.
So here's the thing, right? So what you're saying is, and I agree with you in principle, and I also think it depends on where you work. I think places like Google are profoundly different in how they view professional development than smaller companies. I was working at a place before my job right prior to working at the university which I work. I don't want to say their name because I don't know if all of a sudden a tactical squad will jump in and cut my internet or whatnot.
Right.
But my previous job was a very small company. I was working on a paper from my postdoc, and I billed that as research hours, right? Because I was working on, it was a poster presentation at a conference, and I got all sorts of hassle for it because they're like, well, what is this project, this and that, right? And I'm like, well, the name of the company is going to be on it because I work there now, and that's right. I thought that you would want me to, put the name out there, right? And so it caused a whole fuss.
Yeah,
and that's fine. Whatever. It was like an hour of work.
That's not a big deal. No good deed goes unpunished sort of thing going on there.
But certainly you hear of these companies, right? Everybody says they want lifelong learners, right? Everybody says that they want people who are actively interested in bettering themselves, and they should. Companies should want that, right? Because that's your future. That's what you should want. People who are going to be out there and trying to better themselves, right, in time that is both during their work hours and outside of work hours, right? You want people who are actively engaging their mind, who are actively pursuing a career in the field that they're in, right?
So what you're saying is you don't want people to stagnate, get bored, complacent, and start being terrible at what they're doing?
That is, in fact,
so
yes,
that
very succinctly put.
You're attempting to make sense then.
I tend to try to do that. I don't know. I should have learned my lesson at this point.
Yeah, by now I would have thought that would have been beaten out of you, but apparently not. So
no. Like I said, I'm working at Endgame here, right? Like
that's right.
Not to be too Avengers-y, right? But I'm not focused on short-term stuff right now. I'm focused on what's coming.
Yes. Yeah,
because the stuff that's happening now is not really consequential.
Yeah,
there's a plan for.
Yeah, right. There's a lot to plan for. So one of the things that you hit on that I think is really, really, really key to this whole topic is that when you got your PhD, you mentioned this idea that I have found true in many regards, and it will be a highly inflammatory statement, of course, because many of the statements I make seem to be.
Because you don't have your filter right now.
That's right. Well, no, it's actually just because my crap filter is full, and somebody should really get on washing that out. So the idea is that it is entirely possible, and in fact I would claim that it is just it is de facto reality. We have a large number of people who have in fact been educated well beyond their intelligence, and that is a claim that I will stand by. A lot of people will not like that at all, and I would tell them, challenge me on this and dare to prove me wrong. You will find that's
that
not.
I worked for the government for a bit, and I've seen this in action.
right?
You get promoted out of the way so you can do
yes.
less harm.
There is promoted out of the way is a textbook example of what is done with people who have been educated beyond their intelligence, and that is a thing that is unfortunate, but that's the context in which we exist. So someone can have a PhD and not have the sense to be able to make a smoothie with a prepackaged lot of cut up fruit designed specifically to make smoothies with. That's that is a thing that happens. And I had a bit of an unfortunate nickname generated. I think I told you this story of one of the grad students that I mentored, who was referred to as Bucket Boiler because you earn a name of that caliber. You can't simply be awarded something of that caliber. So this particular individual decided that they were going to stick a plastic autoclave bucket, which is a polypropylene bucket, on a hot plate, fill it with water, and that's what they were going to use to boil the bottles was in the plastic bucket. Have you ever tried to make mac and cheese in a plastic pan on the stove?
No, but
I wouldn't recommend it, because what you're going to end up with is a visit from your local fire department.
Sure.
That's what you're going to end up with. That's the only logical conclusion of this.
Was it BPA free though?
I don't think anything in the lab was BPA free after that incident. So I haven't boiled anything in plastic bucket, but I was making breakfast for a group of friends one day. It's really hard to get through that story with a straight face.
Right? Yeah. And we were using a griddle, right, to make sausages, and the grease trap, right, it was basically like on a Foreman grill, right? You have the grease tray and somebody's gonna dump it, and I asked my friend to dump it while we were cleaning up, and he decided to pour it into the styrofoam egg container.
Oh, I mean, yeah.
Yeah. Luckily, he decided to do this over the sink, which is not ideal. But that's better than him doing it over the trash can. That same effect of what happened to the styrofoam egg container, which was it just disappeared instantaneously.
I was going to say that that was an interesting event.
Yeah, I have so similar results. No fire department necessary, luckily. That apartment though was one of those apartments where they decided to put the smoke detector like right over the range, and so whenever you cooked anything,
yes,
you had to bag your smoke detector.
Nice, solid. Solid.
So there's that.
Good.
Great.
Yes, I lived in an apartment where the smoke detector was placed at the end of the tiny galley kitchen, and by galley I mean you went to one stride or the other, and you were touching either wall. So yeah, it was every time you did anything, that smoke alarm would go off, and it was awesome. So there's all sorts of interesting rabbit trails there, but I think it's important to understand that there's a difference between intelligence, wisdom, and knowledge. Those are not the same thing, not even remotely. Wisdom,
and I think what
is entirely different.
Yeah, and I think what you're. And I think it may sound perhaps to people a certain way, but I want to just clarify that I'm not saying making mistakes is wrong. right? You
No,
learn
you
the most from making
from them.
mistakes.
Yeah.
However, there are avoidable mistakes that you could have not made had you done what Cookie Monster tells you to do, which is stop and think.
Yes. and if only that message had sunken in for some of these children.
You need to stop and think.
Yeah.
That was not the voice changer, by the way. If you liked my Cookie Monster impression,
there you go. Give it a thumbs up.
Leave a comment.
But they also have to give a thumbs up, because if they don't smash the like button, then Inigo Montoya will not come off the screen.
I have read somewhere that whether you hit like or dislike, it doesn't matter. It still helps our videos anyway. So
right.
it doesn't really matter to me, man.
No news is.
I have enough people that dislike me already. It's fine.
Right? Yeah. What are you gonna do?
Add
hurt
your
my
name
feelings?
To the list.
Right? Yeah. You gonna hurt my feelings? Nope. Not so. Yeah. So there's a lot of interesting aspects to professional development as a whole, and so one of the ones that I brought up is one that surprised you, because it's not exactly what would be a commonality in most cases. So professional development, a form of that, an example of that I'm going through right now is day trading, because that's and so there's a whole bunch of people that would immediately jump in and say, you cannot possibly be serious that day trading has anything to do with professional development. And my response to that would be, if you are thinking along the lines of the 99.9% of the information out there about, I made one of the gurus, who shall remain nameless to protect the identity of the heinously guilties.
Yeah, to protect the guilty.
Is I made over $300,000 today. Right?
I mean, who doesn't? Who doesn't?
Most people don't make.
That's right. I don't either.
$300,000 in a day, and the thing is, that is not sensationalized, nor is that inaccurate. That was an actual event. While improbable, it is actually a result of the mathematics of how it was executed. And so instead of turning around and looking at some of those things and saying, that's preposterous, because I have been fairly successful in swing trading, which I would now recategorize as gambling, the way that I was doing it, for a whole stack of reasons, and that will in fact turn into courses and other things later in the future, once this new approach that I'm using has actually been borne out with a history of real results that I can point to. The reality is, if you are trying to step into something without a business mindset, and you're trying to do something like in any business, no matter what it is, right? Leaving aside day trading for the moment as an idea, if you wanted to turn around and take, say $500 and turn it into $150,000, who doesn't want to do that? You're going to be hard pressed to find somebody that says, no, I'll keep the $150 or 500 or whatever I said, right? I think I said 500. So who wouldn't want to turn that into more? So there's something that everybody wants, but the difference is someone who takes an idea They then go through, because this is our topic tonight, they go through the professional development because they're developing something that is a specific for a business skill, right? It's something that they're going to turn around and use as a business skill. There's a whole range of things that you do differently if you are approaching something as a business or as a business process than you do if you are doing what honestly a lot of people in spaces like the day trading space are doing, which is ultimately gambling. And so there is actually a big difference between trading and gambling. If you are doing something, and I actually will pull up a chart or two here just as an example. So this one, this is actually, you know what? As a matter of fact, I'm not going to log into the account, but let me pull this up. So this is an example. No, I'm not interested in installing the app. Let me just pull an example.
I'd just like to say right now, like, hashtag, this is why you need algebra. Okay? It's also in the chat.
Yeah.
So don't
So I'm gonna pull this up. Let me go to full screen on this, and just show this as an example. This is not a fictional. This is not a fictional idea. This is something that was that actually took place.
So do you have this pulled
today.
up right now?
I have it. I don't have it on.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure, because
I've got it on. I think I've got it set now. So I'm going to go ahead and switch to the screen share. So let me show you.
Just wanted to make sure in case.
Yeah.
All right. So that's definitely your YouTube studio. That's up there.
So yeah, this is. Yeah, I'm gonna have to switch this capture so that you can actually see it, because it's supposed to be Chrome, but it's the other Chrome window. Yeah.
Do you think that a good PD would be how to use OBS?
It would actually. A good PD would be how to use OBS. The problem is when you have one window up versus two, and you have, instead of just a raw display capture,
right. The problem is
there's
that
lots of
super
issues.
Finicky. That's the issue.
It is technical. So what this is 710, and that would be today. So this particular stock had some bump in pre-market volume, and there's a bunch of technical things that are associated. Looking back, there was some movement, but all of a sudden today, this specific stock, let me zoom this in a little bit more so that you can see, this specific stock had a pretty good move in the morning. And then, so it went from just under $4 today all the way up to, it closed at about $14.90, I believe was its close. Damn. So this stock today was in the mover sector very early on, and so this is one of the ones that literally was being watched as we were trading this morning. But the because you execute a business with a business plan, for instance, this is a time window where a lot of our activity will actually happen, and so we're not watching most of the rest of the day. So there were some people that traded this, started at $4 early in the morning, and so if you took in, for instance, a $4 position and you bought in, right? That $4 to even that $7 move, $3 a share times, if you're starting with that $500, you do a single day trade with one of the platforms for free. So you're buying
this is for the sake of the math, right? For, let's just say it's $400 and you bought it at $4.
So
just to make the math easy.
Assuming something like $500, you have 125 shares. You sell off even at the $3 mark with a no trading fee platform, and that was $375. You turned that $500 into that $375 plus your $500, and so $500 became $875 in just that move. If you held that same $500, the difference between 14, say you chickened out at 14 and a half and sold at the end of the day somewhere at 14 and a half, subtracting that from about a $4 fill at the beginning, $10.50 times the same 125 shares, you turned that $500 this today by sitting at your computer and not watching Netflix, but by doing something that was professional development.
To be fair,
that $500 just became $1,800. Over $1,800 that $500 became, if you had the training, the discipline, and the plan in place to execute on this. So would you like to have made that 500? This is the mechanics of how that happened. That happened over the course of the day. There were lots of opportunities to get in and make money on that stock today to the tune of hundreds of percent. So that percent return, $1,312.50, give or take, divided by your 500 is a 262.5% return. 262% you could have pulled out of that stock today. That's realistically. So the difference between gambling and trading in the way that it becomes a business is you have and follow a plan. The same is true for professional development in all kinds of other areas. And so if you have and develop a plan for a business, you follow a strategy. What's one of the other things that you do in a business to protect yourself? You control risk and constrain variables, right?
Yeah.
You do exactly the same thing if you're trading. If you're gambling, you stress out, oh, I need this to do this, that, and the other thing. I just need it to go up. I just need 5 more cents. So if you're trying to engage in professional development and you're interested in a topic like that, a topic like stocks, and you see someone telling you, you need, blah, 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 you need all this specific hardware, you need to follow me and take my chat room, and you have to do all these things and take my course, and you have to blah blah blah, and you have to follow me along. What you're stepping into there is very much this. So this was a scene in Top Gear where allegedly Jeremy ran over a whole bunch of sheep because some fancy pants in a supercar runs around and has a whole bunch of sheep following them, and they end up just plowing over them, and that's how they make all of their money, is having them follow them over the edge in a trade. All of the sheep buy up all of the shares that are sold by the guru at the very high percentage. Happens with penny stocks and stuff all the time. Most of that garbage is a scam. Don't sign up for any of it. When you hear those gurus, run away screaming. The difference is trading one of these actual stocks that had large movement today. That was a couple different ones this week. That was, I think, somewhere around a 6 or an 8% gain with totally controlled risk. And so this whole week, applying this kind of personal development by way of really going in depth in the education side, being able to learn the difference between what is gambling and what is trading with a specific plan. You turn it into a business that you are building, and not a craps table, right? So it becomes more than just purely statistics. And the beautiful thing about that is, how many choices do you have on the stock direction?
I mean, really, there's 3, right? It's like it's gonna go up, down, or stay the same.
Right. Really, it comes down to it's mostly gonna be 2, especially if a stock is moving. It goes up and you're right. If you were guessing, it goes up, or it goes down and you're wrong, and vice versa is true. Right?
Yeah, I mean, you can also short sell and things like that.
Yeah, you essentially have 2 choices, and so if you are trading with a plan that makes all of your coin flips, assuming that you take a whole bunch of trades, and this brings in the central limit theorem and a whole bunch of other stuff from other areas.
You mean you need to use like statistics, man?
You need to understand statistics.
Probability?
And understand probability to a degree, but you don't have to have a degree in statistics to be able to understand that as you flip a coin 6 times, you're not going to get a 50-50 perfect result. But if you flip it 20 times, you're going to get closer to a 50-50 result, right? You're either right or you're wrong.
Sample size matters?
And so over more trades, you get toward that central limit theorem of 50%. And so the beauty of the way that the statistics work out, if you are executing at exactly 50-50 or very close to 50-50, if you have a slightly higher gain than you do what's called the risk, the actual amount that you're using, that turns into a winning proposition wherein you return anywhere above a 1-to-1, and so you don't break even, you make money over the course of the many trades. So to a degree, it stops mattering whether you're right or wrong if you execute correctly the way that you are controlling the risk on either side of that. Now, there's a whole bunch more beneath that, but that's the basic mechanics of it. So if you have a 0.5 win ratio because it's a coin flip, and you are controlling that risk to where your wins are as high as 2-1, the statistics play out to where you make money based on just the raw statistics. There is still an element of strategy in stacking the deck to where you can have better than a 50-50 coin flip as to whether or not a stock is going to move the direction you think it is. But the point is, there's a huge difference between controlling and executing a process and just hoping for the best, right? Chick-fil-A doesn't just launch a new sandwich out of nowhere, right? One of the things that drove me nuts is for the longest time, there wasn't really much of an option for gluten-free customers. They came out and they took an extra, I don't know if it was like 2 years or 3 years, maybe it was even 4 years before they launched the gluten-free bun for their sandwiches. What was the result of that? They don't have customers like me who have no choice in being gluten-free coming back and saying, oh, this is garbage, you need to redo it, I'm giving you bad feedback, I'm leaving you bad reviews, I'm trashing you on social media because you don't understand food allergies and how much I'm a victim because I can't have all the regular things, and so you need to pander to my specific requirements, and all these things that people do on social media, right? So what they did instead is probably somebody had good professional development somewhere up in the leadership, and they thought, maybe when we launch that product, it should not suck.
I hope that's not just because they had professional development. I would hope that's in general the higher ups in your company. You would
hope so,
place of
right?
Business. I hope that they are in general having a mindset of we should put out products that don't suck. It's a very, very low bar to ask for.
That is a very low bar, right? But the point is, they waited and then intentionally placed their shot with a good product. And the result is fantastic, and I will go out of my way to go and get a gluten-free chicken sandwich because I don't want to go to In-N-Out, who could basically care less, and they wrap all your stuff in lettuce and change their gloves. So as much as that is loved by social media, and the gram, I'm sure, loves In-N-Out, their product is not on par.
I'm gonna have to stop you, because if you're gonna talk bad about In-N-Out, then we can end this right now.
Right, that's probably what the listeners would want. So but the point there is, there's lots and lots of aspects of professional development that don't just apply to the job that you're in now.
It's frustrating.
It can be very broad.
It's frustrating because you are told from an early age, whether you went to college right after high school or not, right? You're told from an early age that employers are interested in well-rounded people, right? Specifically, if you're told, and this starts definitely in college, right? You're told, well, if you want to go into engineering, right? If you want to go into engineering or one of the sciences, what SAT result is most important for you?
That's one that is talked about pretty often, because they'll talk about the section that's math and reasoning, and I don't remember what that section is called now. It may just be called the math score.
Let's just say there's a math and there's a verbal. Let's go old school. We'll say there's three sections: math, verbal, and writing, right? Because now there's an essay portion.
There is.
So as somebody who's going into a school and you're applying to an engineering college, which one of those scores would you think is going to be touted as being most important by their admissions committee?
It's an important question. It is an important question. You would think that the math is going to be heavily focused on.
You would, but they are assuming that everyone's going to score perfect on the math. So what's going to set you apart, right? It's the writing. That's right, Juan. Is either the writing or the verbal, right? That is what is going to set you apart. People are looking for you to be well-rounded. And then when you get to certain companies professionally, right? You are then given this you're given double talk, right? You're told one thing, but things are done in a different way, right? You're told, yeah, go after all this PD, oh, but we're not gonna. Don't do that, right?
Right.
But what you ultimately want to do for your own benefit is, and this not just for engineering, but I'm going to use the engineering example because that's where I'm at, right? As an engineer, being able to solve problems is what you do. How do you solve more problems effectively? You get as much perspective as you can.
Yep.
Right? There's a reason.
On as many topics, using as many tools, all of the things that you can learn, that you give an opportunity to, learn it.
Yep. And there's a reason why, if you look at a lot of the papers dealing with human motor control, there's a reason why a lot of that stuff mimics control system theory, which came out of engineering. It's because some engineer who's a controls engineer was like, you know what? I'm really interested in how the brain does things, how the nervous system is controlled, right? How do we control our muscles? Let me apply what I know about engineering control systems and bring that over to talk about the human body.
Yeah.
Right. And that's where you get these innovative solutions to problems, by bringing in outside perspectives. And to use the cliche terminology, thinking outside the box, which is now the normal, which is what people expect you to do, right? This is the whole idea of interdisciplinary teams, right? But can you make yourself into the interdisciplinary team? Right.
That's the hard part, and that's why my particular defense was so difficult. Is it was a very broad spectrum project. It was a series of linked projects with similar principles, but it was not the traditional single large project with some branches that you become the expert on, left-handed 12 millimeter thread bolts, and absolutely everything about that.
Just as an aside, you should never do anything left-handed.
Yeah, that could be hazardous to your health.
Did you buy those at the Ned Flanders Left-Handed Emporium?
Could be. I think the big problem,
before we get sued by Disney for using the Simpsons reference.
Right. Yes, because Disney owns everything, and that's why Vader now wears Mickey Mouse ears, which makes me want to throw up. And so, yeah, I think the important thing is you need to be able to pull in that and synthesize information from all these disparate areas, all these different areas that you've learned, all of these different aspects.
Somebody has to, if you have an interdisciplinary team, everybody speaks a different language, right? Somebody has to be the hub for that, right?
Yes.
Somebody has to be able to interpret all of the things that are going on. Make yourself that person, and you have job security.
Yeah. And that's why I
that might mean going out of pocket for some professional development costs, and that's okay.
That is okay. That's
invest in yourself, right? Invest in yourself.
Yeah. And that's so the kinds of professional development that I've been doing, in many cases with my own funding, is ranging from becoming an expert in problem solving in these new direct injected engines, to and that's, I have a whole story and series of videos that's going to come out on that, actually, on the other channel. That's the fancy monetized one. I'm putting together intentionally, and going to be putting out videos intentionally placed into a question space that is dominated by speculation on forums, and I'm going to approach it with a scientific data analysis mindset. And so I have actual data, like in this case, camera images that are inspecting the backside of the valves in my truck. And so I am going to, so I've seen exactly what the buildup looks like on the backside of the valves because of the way that direct injection mechanics work, especially turbocharged direct injection motors. There's going to be a lot of those vehicles that are not going to be running right, and they're not going to be fixable by outside means because of this exact issue. A whole bunch of carbon building up, and the manufacturers don't care because they keep selling new cars. Until people realize that you really can't afford a $950 a month car payment for a lease on a Mitsubishi.
I mean, I've got fat professor money rolling in, so of course I can.
Sorry, it's just something ridiculous I heard.
You know how I do it? I'm up to my eyeballs in debt.
That's right. Somebody help me. I can barely pay my finance charges. That's the way that's such a sad commercial. There's a reason they don't use that commercial anymore.
It hits too close to home.
It hits too close to home. Yes. So that kind of thing, I've been working on and learning, and so that kind of video content, properly placed, will see something like 250,000 views. And so I have the topic, the specialty, the expertise, and the viewership on other videos to reach 250,000 views and actually build the subscriber base. So there is no, at this point in time, there is no monetary incentive of any kind for either of us to be doing this right now. There's literally
Correct.
No. It costs me
Correct.
time and is not immediately profitable for me. So this is a thing that that both of us, I think, do right now. If it turns into something bigger with a larger audience later, great, fantastic, awesome. They'll probably start chiming in somewhere around episode 100 is where the audience will actually start picking up.
I'm assuming that most people are just saving it in their watch list to watch it later.
Could be.
That's what I'm assuming.
There is some viewership, but the flat Earth stuff Corey, gets the most attention. So the point is that you don't have to limit your professional development to the profession that you're in either.
Right.
And that's also a really, really important point, because if you are, one of the saddest things I ever heard is a conversation that I had with one of the accountants that my wife worked with. We went to one of their Christmas parties, and he was like, oh boy, I love astronomy. Like, it's just so cool. But you know, I have to be an accountant, so I can't do that. And I had a conversation with him like, wait,
Why
what?
Not?
Why not? You can't learn about astronomy? Like, you can't study it on your own?
Look, having hobbies and having interests is important. It allows you to shift gears and rest there is such a thing as, problem fatigue, right?
Yes.
That's not the exact word for it, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
You
I'm
stare at a
familiar with
problem
it.
too long, and you're getting nowhere. You're
Right.
spinning your wheels. You need to disengage.
Yeah.
Right? That's it, and that's what having a hobby does for you. Whether that's playing video games or buying a telescope and some astronomy books, right? Like,
Right. I
one or the other.
literally I just looked at him and I asked him, like, well, why can't you learn more about astronomy? Like, there are so many
And in fact,
freely available resources that
In
literally
fact, I would
don't even
argue-
require you to read. Like, there's so many videos and stuff on that.
I would actually argue that that's a great hobby because it happens outside of work hours.
Yes,
Right?
necessarily.
You can't do that during the day. Like, you can't. I could play video games during the day and blow off work, right? I can't
Sure.
go stargazing in the middle of the day. It's just not.
I mean, you could try.
I could.
You would look silly. You would look markedly silly. But
And how is that different than any other day when standing in front of a classroom? It's.
well,
I
mean,
imagine
there's-
it'd be the same looks that my students give me.
it would be the same sort of looks. Yes, so that would be about the same. Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
just
There's
used to
other. I'm also making faces, but of
Nailed
course you
it.
can't see them because the
Because of the
face of
mask.
Vader is precisely the same always.
It's
That's the
it's
beauty
just
of the mask.
Imagine the scene from Spaceballs.
That's
Anybody watching this, imagine the scene from Spaceballs.
that's right. So
Between
there's
Darth Helmet and Scroob.
so many things that you can do, that you can learn, and the idea that there is such a thing as too much PD, unless it's the same topic over and over and over every year and you're not actually professionally developing, which
I don't want
violates
it-
the very term, right?
Sure. So I don't want it to sound like I'm recanting on what I have said before, right? I do think. So personally, I don't think that there's such a thing as too much learning, right? That would be silly for the line of work that I'm in. I am a firm believer in that you should be picking up skills your entire life. Now, that being said, my point from earlier, right, if you were watching at the beginning or if you want to rewind or whatever, is that wherever you're working may not monetize, right, may not think it valuable for you to pursue certain interests in terms of professional development, which is where you need to be okay with doing some of these things on your own dime.
Yeah,
Right? That's really my thesis for that one.
that's exactly what I did with the large-scale 3D printing project that I took on and ended up literally teaching myself. I had some experience and a fair bit of knowledge already, but I had no concept of how much I didn't know that I didn't know on 3D printing, right? Because I looked at some of the ads and things, because everybody and their dog has courses on the internet, right?
Some of those canine courses aren't all they're cracked up to be, though.
There's-
I would steer from those.
Yeah,
But
there's a whole bunch of
people learn in different ways, though.
garbage
There are
out there.
different learning styles, so
There are, and that works for some, but there's, I looked at some of those, and like, there's some that even are for 3D printing. Now, maybe not as many as I would have thought, but I looked at that initially as I was starting some of the stuff, and I was like, boy, what a crock of nonsense. Nobody needs that. And then I had to end up going through the exercise of doing a whole bunch of different research, spending a whole bunch of different time in various CAD softwares to completely redesign a bunch of the different components, the feed parts of the printers, as well as the completely redesigning literally the entire print head completely, all of the parts except for the actual linear bearings on the hardened guide rods are now different. And now the printer works infinitely better than it ever did brand new, because I've updated it in technology by at least about 10 years, right? Anytime you update the technology by about a decade, interesting things happen, right? If you do it correctly, things work way better. And that's what I've managed to do here. But that was a personally funded PD project, and that has turned out to be very beneficial to me personally, because I now know so much more about especially specialized filaments and all the specific requirements, and super duper detailed minutia to the extent that I would now classify myself truly as a 3D printing expert. Now, I'm not a 3D printing professional, and there's a difference there, right? So I am a subject matter expert on 3D printing at this point, including certifications to that effect and so on, right? So I have done a thing not directly inside my wheelhouse, but stepping out farther into the area of modifying the electronics involved and lots of things. But the learning that I got out of that now has me in a position where if I, for whatever reason, especially given some of the other things that we're talking about doing down the road, if I needed to build from scratch an extremely high throughput large format printer, something like about a 3 foot by 3 foot by 3 foot cube, right? I'm not scared of setting out to do that. It'll take me a while to find a few of the very specific parts I will need, but I'm not terrified by that prospect if that's something that I have to do. So if I need to be able to print parts in that kind of a volume fast, I know what to do. I know which kinds of filament I want to use to do it. I know what kind of control board, and I can set up a whole cool wireless cloud thing where I could send prints to it and monitor stuff remotely from anywhere. So I could even be on travel and start something live with a client or collaborator or something, and do it all on a tablet right in front of them based on a file that they emailed me or something, right? So that's a thing that at the beginning of this year I had no concept that was a thing, but I now know, because of all of this process, I know how to get there at a whole other level than before I engaged in that process. So you don't have to be limited to just the stuff that's inside your wheelhouse. The more you push out, the more you expand and broaden your capabilities outside just your immediate discipline, the more useful you become in all sorts of scenarios. The only caveat to that, really, truly, is don't get good at stuff you don't want to do. A very wise man told me that. Don't get good at something you don't want to do. So,
fact.
Yeah. I've done a lot of that way too often. Do as I do, or in many cases, don't do as I do, but definitely do as I say.
I try that with my kids all the time, and it doesn't really work out. But
yeah, that's reasonable. All right. What are your final closing thoughts on this topic?
Diversify your skill set. That's it. Bottom line. If you want to be better at anything, bringing outside experiences from that field is entirely important and necessary.
Yeah.
If you don't push yourself to grow, there's a certain point where other people, no one else is going to do it for you. So
True story.
Do Do you want to be the person that people want to hire, or do you want to be the person who's just comfortable with the, the mid-tier job that can't move up because lack of motivation, right? Set a goal for yourself, figure out the best plan to get there, execute the plan.
Yeah.
Repeat. Don't set super far future goals, right? You should do that too, but work out intermediate goals, right? This is basic project planning.
So what you're saying
your life is
is
a project. Your life is a project. Figure out your milestones.
Have a
and figure out how to
plan
get there.
and execute on the plan. Rinse and repeat.
Yes. I would also say at any cost.
Works in business, except for the at any cost, right? But it works in business. It works in personal development. Be willing to step outside of the comfort zone, learn new things, because that's what makes you much more useful, and you will use stuff that you didn't know you needed to know. You will use stuff later on down the line that you may have wondered, why did I even need to learn that or go through all of that stuff? It will get used down the line. You just don't know how, what, when, and where.
Even if for no other reason than you tried something and you found out that you didn't actually like it.
Yeah.
That's valuable. Negative experience is valuable experience as well.
Yes, it is.
So,
it's still plus to XP. So plus to XP is good. Right.
Yes.
So
I mean, it really it comes down to use the gaming analogy. Do you want to be killing boars for 1 XP? Or do you want to be trying something that's a little bit more difficult, but the gain of XP is much more greater? There's also the risk, though, right? So
there you go. There you go.
Think about it.
That's fair. All right. Well, I think that brings us to a reasonable conclusion. Diversify your skill set and remember to do all the PD, no matter what the cost. That's our takeaway.
No matter the
There you
cost.
go. No matter the cost.
Wait, let me just put a carrot on that. No matter the cost.
There you go.
All right, that'll
be it.
Also, that's not really right. Like, don't. I mean, unless you're like you find yourself in Game of Thrones, don't act like that. Be a good person, right? I'm not gonna tell you to do the wish board or whatever the heck that thing is, where that's not necessarily a true thing.
I've seen variations of those. Yeah,
I will tell you this. The positive version of that isn't true, but the negative version is, right? If you put negative things out in the world, that's bad. Don't do that. Putting positive things out in the world doesn't return necessarily positive things.
The why on that combination of prosperity gospel and what do they call it? I can't even remember because it's this stupid thing that my brain thinks is stupid and it doesn't remember because I don't care. It's an intentional knowledge app. Your brain has actually lesioned on that knowledge so that it won't remember. Pretty much. It's speaking. It's for all intents and purposes the current modern version of speaking a thing into existence. It's the word of faith, power of word. It's literally one of the oldest things in the book. Like, look up the story in Genesis where the snake is deceiving Adam and Eve. The idea that you can speak with power into the universe and affirm that a thing is going to happen, right? I've already applied this principle because when the call goes out on Sunday, I'm going to get a call that says that I have won the Viper that is rightfully mine because I've already won it. Right, and
I
that
believe that
mindset.
doesn't this fall under divination though? Is that not something that is frowned upon by the Lord?
It is. It is
just
word of it. So there's that is an entire podcast that 5 people on Earth will be able to actually sit still through. But that is a whole other podcast. Word of faith is garbage. Being able, the notion that you can speak into existence things that happen because somewhere someone misinterpreted a scripture to think that because we're made in the image of God that we also can create with our words.
I can create certain things with my words, like dissension.
Yes.
And
so the people that are doing this didn't bother reading the entire book of James. So they ought to try that sometime. Because the tongue is not referred to in the Bible as an instrument of growth, healing,
it's pure evil.
And or it's the symbology in which it is used is always negative. So with that, I think that's a reasonable stopping point tonight, and I think we have lots of options for what we'll do in the coming weeks.
Remember, I would just one more thing to say. There's no I in team, but there is an I in interdisciplinary team. There's a couple of them.
There's a few. They're scattered.
So I mean, be the interdisciplinary team.
That's right.
Strive to be the I in interdisciplinary team.
That's right. Learn to be better.
Also, then your coworkers will hate you because they'll all be fired and you can take all their jobs for less pay. So
there you go. So with that, we'll catch you guys next week. Have a good one.
See ya.